I had to come out of my slumber because I'm starting to hear even black people are parroting this culture thing where they're pushing the idea that, well, black culture is negative and all these other cultures are great. And so I'm starting to see videos on places like TikTok, like this.
I've been thinking Chinese people gotta give us a lot of secrets. Like, did y'all realize that I've never met a Chinese kid be like, y'all know about my dad. I've never met a Chinese kid that does not have both parents. Like, please teach us. Like, what are you guys doing? Then to top it off, I've never met a poor Chinese person. I've never met a poor I've never had a Chinese friend be like, man, can I borrow $10? Like, what are they doing? Like, what are you doing that you're not teaching us? Like, how come you guys got these perfect families with all this perfect money, with all this perfect rice? I just don't get it.
And people are implying that, oh, these people, they live such great lives and they don't have the same experience as you see black Americans having, where you have some black Americans who come from broken homes, some who are homeless, some who are poor. And they're like, well, it's just the culture. It's the black American culture. It must be because all these other people are doing so great. I understand now that, people are stupid. I don't want to sugarcoat it. People are dumb and they're incapable of using logic. That's just a reality. You get to that in your older age that, people are stupid and incapable of using logic. So they can't figure certain things out. They just say shit without thinking. Have you ever been to any of these other countries? Do you know? So, for instance, the video I just posted, the girl, I'll use China as an example. I'm not picking on Chinese people. I'm using China as an example because that's the video I posted. That's what the girl's talking about. There are huge swaths of their population that are impoverished, living in squalor and filth. You have people there that live in, I can't even call them small apartments. They're like cubby holes.
It is estimated that hundreds of thousands of people are now forced to live in partition apartments known as coffin homes. Coffin homes are small apartments that have been subdivided and converted into even more minuscule partitions. Sometimes there are more than 20 people living within. Mr. Simon Wong, a resident in one of these coffin homes, allowed us to visit his humble abode. A narrow, meter-wide hallway cuts through the complex. All of the 20 to 30 inhabitants are forced to share a set of toilets and a single sink. There is no kitchen for cooking. This particular property, however, while cramped and claustrophobic, seems clean and orderly. It's oddly quiet. The tenant must crawl through a small meter-wide hole to enter. Mr. Wong's own personal unit measures just 1 meter by 2 meters, which incidentally is about the size of a coffin. The unit barely has enough room for a small mattress, from which he can either watch TV or sleep. There is an option for reprieve from the cramped space of one's personal unit, and that is taking 12 flights of stairs to the roof. But Mr. Wong spends most of his time inside his coffin home, watching television. Mr. Wong was kind enough to let us film from his point of view within his unit, so that you can see for yourself exactly what it will look like to live inside the claustrophobic confines of a Hong Kong coffin home. Mr. Wong says his television is on 24 hours a day, even when he's asleep. He watches it continuously and says he can't live without it. He's afraid of his coffin home being too quiet. He's afraid of the dark.
They live in like locker-sized rooms, I guess. They like live in a space and they have a shared bathroom. It's not even like they have their own room and that they're sharing in a house. No, they live in a space within a room and they share the bathroom and the kitchen and stuff with the whole building. Just a lot of squalor. You have a lot of sexual assault, broken homes, single parents. I'm from New York, so I've met a good number of Chinese people who either immigrated here or who were first generation. And a good number of them come from broken homes. One girl I knew, she only lived with her father. These two brothers I knew, they only lived with their mother. So it happens here too, but you don't see it as much here. And so when people look at other cultures of people that migrate here, they're like, well, these people are doing so great. I get so tired of hearing that. So I just wanted to make this video to clear something up. In America, when you're talking about Black American culture, not every Black person is homeless or on drugs or committing crime or come from a broken home. That's a small percentage of Black society. When they talk about Black culture, they don't talk about all the middle to working class families, kids who live with both of their parents. They don't talk about the upper class and wealthy Blacks. The way people talk, it's like when you come here, Black Americans all live in the sewer. I've lived in New York. I've lived in Virginia. I've lived in another southern state. Every place that I've gone, most of the Black families that I knew growing up, most of my friends, both lived in two-family homes. Only two of my friends came from broken homes. One lived with his mother, the other one lived with his father. The rest of them, they lived with their parents, both of their parents. Well, that's not true. I had another one that had a stepfather. But the rest of them lived with both of their parents. All had either nice apartments, or they owned co-ops, or they owned condos, or they owned homes. My family, we owned a co-op in New York, and we owned a private home in Virginia at the same time. And that's not uncommon that you have Black people owning homes. When I lived in Virginia, when everybody lived in a house, all of the Black people I knew owned their own homes. Of course, you don't have every Black person is doing great, but that's everybody, every American. The whites that live here, they come from broken homes. All of the true crime documentaries, they all, like 99.9% of them, go over degeneracy within white culture, from murders to white, professionals doing unethical or illegal, perverse things to their employees or to the people that in their care. It shows like Intervention that have been going on. What is that show, like 20 years in running, going over all of the degeneracy, primarily in white culture. I think in all my years watching Intervention, I think I've seen maybe 3, maybe 4 Black people on that show. The rest are primarily white. There's some Asians, maybe 1 or 2 thrown in there, but most of them are white. And most of those people come from homes where the parents were drug addicts, or a parent or family member abused them in some perverse way. They come from broken homes. They have blended families. Blended family is a well-known thing in white society. White women will become single mothers, and unlike Black women, white women will immediately get into another relationship to make sure she has some sort of financial help. So when you look at broken homes with Black women, it's not that Black women are degenerate or less than. That is actually a strength of Black women, in all honesty, if you think about it logically. I've known Black women who have, it didn't work out with the kid's father and they separate for whatever. And the woman is single and she stays single for a long time. And when I ask them, you're not looking for a new relationship, most of them tell me, no, I'm not doing that because I don't want to risk something happening to my child. So I'm not going to get into a new relationship with someone whose mind I can't read, and I don't know if this person is a pervert or psychotic, and they do something to my child. I wouldn't bring that uh, risk into my home with my child. That's why you have a lot of single black mothers. They either will date privately, so they're not in a serious relationship, or they wait till their kid is of age. They're a teenager or maybe even an adult. Then they'll start dating, seriously dating. But they don't want to jump into the dating pool because they don't want to put their children at risk. White women aren't the same. I'm not saying that white women are horrible, but white women aren't the same. They want to make sure they have some sort of financial security. So they'll shack up with somebody practically immediately. Practically immediately. And that's why you have shows like Intervention, because you have a lot of these white women enter into these relationships quickly so that they're not labeled as a single mother, and they get with some guy who's a pervert who likes doing things to infants. And the guy winds up doing something to their children. So just because you see a small percentage of blacks living that way, it's not all black people living that way. And I say all that because if you go to these other countries, like we talked about China, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see a percentage of people that do very well, exceptionally well. You'll have a percentage of people that do all right. You have a percentage of people that survive, and then you just have a percentage of people that don't make it. They're just either lazy or whatever happens in their life. They just don't excel, or they just fail at life. That happens everywhere. just That happens everywhere. The Chinese, most of the Chinese people that you see here excelling, those that's like the let's go back to what I said earlier. So let's use China as the example. So in places like China, you have people that are doing exceptionally well, that are doing really well, that are just getting by, and people at the very bottom. The people at the very bottom don't have the means, the know-how, or anything else, or the help to migrate over to another country. So you're not going to see them here. The ones that are just getting by, same thing. They tend to not have the means and the know-how and the help to migrate to another country to make their life better. So you're always going to see either the ones that are doing exceptionally well or the ones that are doing well. That's what you normally see. And those people come over here and they continue to do well. They have the means to continue that the life that they had over there. They have the know-how, or they have the help. That's why you don't see all of that, the degeneracy over here, because the degenerate ones stay where they are. They stay in their country. You're not going to see them here. Same thing with the people that migrate here from Europe, the ones that migrate here from South America, legally, the ones that migrate here from the Caribbean, and the ones that migrate here from Africa. The best of the best find a way to leave. It's the ones that are just getting by, and the degenerate ones, they don't have a way to get here. They stay over there. So you're not going to see that here. It don't mean that it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that those people have better cultures. It just means that you don't live amongst the degenerate circles from their cultures, because the degenerate circles are back home in their countries. The Americans, we don't need to migrate nowhere. So the degenerate ones here, where the fuck they're not going to migrate nowhere. You don't see that. And the ones that are doing well, they don't migrate nowhere. They're going to stay here. Because America up until now has been, kind of the top dog. So most of the successful, powerful, well-to-do Black Americans, they're not migrating anywhere. They stay here. So you're going to see the full stretch of blacks here. You're going to see the ones that are doing well, and you're going to all the way to the ones that are degenerates. You're going to see that, because where the wealthy ones aren't going anywhere, and the degenerates don't have any options. Where are they going to go? From the degenerates here, if they go anywhere else, life's going to be even worse for them. So they're not going to leave. They're going to stay here. I get annoyed with people thinking that. I hear a lot of people from Africa saying the same thing. Well, Black culture over here is bad. Well, why the hell are you here then? Most of those people that migrate over here, they don't migrate here because their culture is so great and everything is great back home. They migrate here because shit is not good. The culture where they come from is fucked. And it leads to a lot of shit. So those people are forced to run away and come here. That's why they're here. So all that shit about, oh, well, our culture is great and your culture is bad. Well, then why didn't you stay with your culture? They don't stay with their culture because they have the same issues in their culture that everyone else has in their own culture. You have a good part of the culture, and then you have a degenerate part of the culture. That's a part of life. You're going to have good people and you're going to have shit people. You're going to have great people, good people, and shit people. That's what you're going to have. That's in every single culture. And people just say that, just sit there and pretend that it's only black Americans, knowing that they literally just fled from some place where children get abused in the streets publicly. And it was so bad they had to run away and leave and migrate somewhere else. You know how much effort it takes to migrate to another country? You wouldn't do all of that if the place where you were was so great. So those Chinese people that come over here, they're running away from the horrible parts of their culture. Because again, every culture has horrible parts, including black Americans. We have some degeneracy in our culture, but so does everyone else. Sitting here implying that nobody else has any degeneracy in their culture and only black Americans is degenerate, that is, you either are a pathetic, jealous cocksucker who is so jealous of black people you create these stupid fantasies in your head, or you're just a dumb fool who is incapable of thinking logically and understanding things for yourself. I grew up in the Bronx, and there were a lot of Jamaicans that migrated there. And Jamaicans talk all highly of themselves as if we're garbage. And you go and visit the places that they come from in Jamaica, and it's literally like slums. And you're like, well, why are you guys implying that you live in a town where there's gold sitting in the roads? Why would you leave that place and come here? If your place is so great, well, what are you doing here in the Bronx? One of the worst parts of New York City. What would you be doing here? You came here because where you come from is even worse than here. And that's why you left where you live. So I hate that myth that people keep pushing around that, oh, black people, black Americans, just because they're black Americans, aren't automatically degenerate. What happened to the Michael Jordans and the Oprah Winfreys and the Michael Jacksons? And all these people that really, literally do great things. What culture did you think they came from? The LeBron James. All of these people that reach great heights and do great things, the Martin Luther Kings. What culture where do you think they came from? They came from black American culture. We produce stuff that is just as great, if not greater, than all the other cultures. We have inventors, we have writers, we have entertainers, we have athletes, people that reach great heights and accomplish great things. And of course, the flip side of that, we have some people that engage in degeneracy, just like every other culture around the globe. I don't want to hear that shit about, oh, it's just black Americans and why don't black Americans, why don't they have great families? We do have great families. As a black American, I can tell you, I come from a great family. My wife has a great family. Most of my friends had great regular families whose parents were together until death, or still together, now, the ones that are still alive. The parents I'm talking about. My friends are all still alive, I hope. But yeah, the vast majority of us don't live in the slums. And some of the ones that do come from a degenerate life tend to work themselves out of degeneracy and move on to at least a life of normalcy. The degeneracy that was put upon us by other people. We fight our way out of it. So whenever someone's coming to you talking about, oh, it's black American culture engaging in this, engaging in that, one last thing I want to say about that is a lot of people talk about, what was it that somebody said about black people, black culture, doing great in like the 40s, up to the 50s or 60s maybe. And then around that time, after the civil rights movement was passed, you started to see a decline in black families. And I wanted to bring that up because again, I'm from New York, and I have, my family is Black American, so they some of them moved from the South into New York, and they watched the change. And the change happened not just because the civil rights movement was passed. The primary reason why you had a decline or or a shift in the Black American experience here in this country is because around that time they started to funnel immigrants from the Caribbean here, and then years later started funneling immigrants from Africa here. And my father told me something. My father grew up in a neighborhood in the Bronx, and he grew up around a lot of Jewish people, and there were Italians also. Once the immigrants started being funneled here from the Caribbean, the Jews and the Italians all left and moved to different parts or moved to different boroughs completely. And my father started to notice a shift. He said he would be walking to his house from school, and he said the Caribbean women would drop used diapers out the window. He's like, why would they do that? He couldn't understand it. And little changes like that started to happen. You started to see a shift in the way Black people, not Black Americans, but Black people, because most people can't tell the difference. They just see Black people. They don't know if you're from Trinidad or Jamaica, or if you're from Louisiana or from North Carolina. They don't know the difference. They just see a Black person, unless you start talking maybe. So they just seeing Black people. But a lot of the degeneracy came from these people who came from these backward cultures, who came here and couldn't assimilate into the American way of doing things, the way that America kind of built itself. And they just brought things from their own culture, like dropping used diapers out the window. That's why when you go to some of these cultures in these countries in the Caribbean, you see trash in the streets a lot, because that's what they were used to. They would throw their trash outside, because in a lot of these Caribbean places, for example, they had biodegradable stuff. They would throw chicken bones and stuff, and the animals would eat it. It would turn to dirt. The garbage here that we use in this sick backward country here is not biodegradable, a lot of plastics and stuff like that. So they don't know the difference. Garbage is garbage. So they throwing the garbage out the window here like they would do back home. That's just one example. There was a lot of stuff that they would do that was abnormal to the society here. And it wasn't that it was Black Americans. It was these immigrants that were being brought here from this so-called great culture that were doing these things that were abnormal to to American society. So that's why you started to see that change. It wasn't the civil rights movement. It was all the immigrants being brought here. The same way that when the European immigrants, like the Italians, the Jews, the Irish, when they were brought here, they did the same thing. They lived in squalor. They threw their trash in the streets. They created gangs, killed people, created insanely huge crime networks. The difference between the Black immigrants and the European immigrants is the European immigrants were slowly able to assimilate into American culture. So they just started to slowly adopt certain things from American culture and get rid of the degenerate stuff from their own culture. The Blacks that were immigrated here, just like the American Blacks, they're not able to assimilate into the white culture. So they kind of held on to a lot of their old stuff, because they didn't want to be part of Black American culture, but they couldn't be part of white American culture. So they just stayed themselves. And you started to see a lot of their degeneracy bleed over into our culture. And that's why you started to see that shift. So all these cultures that you think people have that are so great.
When you think of England, you probably think of this. But there's another side of England, towns that are hit with poverty and neglect, like Jaywick, where the median household income is just $38,000 a year.
If we don't get out in the next couple of weeks, we wouldn't survive.
I'm heading there alone to witness life in crumbling homes and abandoned streets.
We're being left behind.
I want to meet the people who stay despite floods, drugs, and the town's tough reputation.
They're not as great as you think. Again, you have degeneracy in every culture. You have great people in every culture. And then at the other end of that, you have degeneracy. That's every culture. It's not a Black American thing. It's a human thing. And next time somebody says that bullshit to you, that, oh, it's Black American culture, why are there single mothers? Remind them of the places that they came from. Remind them of the fact that if their cultures were so great, they wouldn't have to leave their culture and go somewhere else that, according to them, is so degenerate.